Miriam Joy, and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to show you how to make this beautiful Be Blessed kind of fall harvest sign. And this is really a beautiful stencil. We're going to show you where to get that awesome stencil at, as well as talked about recycled materials to make the sign, to make it even that more affordable. Let's get started. On my Be Blessed sign, signs are really big, and I've done a lot of signs in the past, and I really love doing them. But one of the things I noticed is how expensive the signs were. They're everywhere, but an average sign is $10 to $15, and they come in different colors and all kinds of fun stuff. But I really thought, man, I can't afford to almost give those as gifts to people. They're just too expensive. If you do pick up your sign, get your coupons and do them that way, because that'll be a lot more affordable. But I went around our property and I was kind of looking for different things, and we had gotten some wood paneling, and we were using on a project we were using, and your wood paneling comes in little let's see, 8-foot by 4-foot strips, and we had extra. But even if you went and bought wood paneling, it cost us $9 for that strip. And then I cut it where each slot was down into signs, and then not only that, they're so much lighter. These are so much lighter. So I cut it into the size that I want my sign to be. I'm also going to drill a hole on each side to hang it when I get done. But now I have this lightweight sign that's really, really nice. You would just kind of want to make sure that you've washed it really well if it happened to be outside. If you have a Habitat for Humanity, that might be a great place to look. But if you're going to go get a new one, think of all the signs that you can make out of that. I can't imagine 20 to 30 signs minimum, so there's a lot you can do. Be careful with your edges. They are going to be a little bit more rougher, and we'll kind of cover that up a little bit. But I would just kind of knock them off. Make sure you don't have any sharp parts. And I am not going to sand this. This is already kind of sealed and pre-treated, so we're not going to have to seal it. If you want that lip there removed, then just cut that right there. And I just used, you could use even a jigsaw to cut these. So they are real inexpensive to make. So that's something to think about instead of the wooden signs that were so expensive today and are popular. So we'll make our own. And I went and I had a designer friend help me with stencils. I love this stencil. She just did such an awesome job. And you can get it at spumanidesigns.com. Just tell her Miriam Joy sent you. But what I love about this is there's so many things we can do with it. I did some other videos that I used palette wood and made individual signs. But the combination of these is just endless. You could use the Be Blessed, you could use Blessed, you could use this part, you could use the heart. I've used all the pumpkins together. We've also improved this so you have a bridge between your pumpkins, so you could use one, you could use it on this side, you could use it on this side. On my other one with the palette signs, I put a leaf down here. You can put an acorn. It's just unlimited. You could use those two, you could use those two. Just really, really think out of the box. And when you come to the stencil, I've already made 8 signs with this stencil. It's really well made, and it's going to last me, and that's what I love about it. So I kind of have already pre-cut my wood. I've lined it up so I know it fits between here and here. The first thing we're going to do to our sign is we're going to shade around the edges of this just to make the middle of it stand out. This really, really, really helps to make your sign. If there's one thing to improve it, this is it. And I'm going to be using any type of acrylic paint. A multi-surface paint might be really, really good, but I try not to tell you colors too much, but give you suggestions. That way you're not looking for a color, oh, I've got to have this color. So I'm going to be using a medium brown for this because our sign is so light, and we're going to float our color. And get this paint poured here. And I do have a video on how to float color. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. It also can be called highlighting or shading. That just depends whether it's a lighter or darker color. So I'm using a big flat here, and we're going to be dipping it in, and I'm going to go probably about 3/4 of the way on my brush, and then we're going to blend that out. So you're going from a lot of paint to no paint, and we're going to just do this all along the edges. Now, because we have a little bit more ridges on this, we're going to have a little bit more water in this technique than we normally would, and walk it back and forth in between those ridges a little bit, and that is okay. And any area where it should be, you don't want a solid line. It should be going from solid to nothing. So there's little techniques that you can use, just kind of like I did there, to help that if you need to. So we're kind of doing it a little bit different than you normally would because we're dealing with a different type of wood. There's nothing wrong with doing what works. I always try to tell people to do what works. So now I'll give that a chance to dry up. We're going to go to our other side here. I'm going to do the same thing here. There's also floated medium, but I don't think that would really work real well with this wood because we're just kind of doing it different. I don't know how else to explain that. We're just working with what we have and making that work. This is where your flat sign would obviously be a lot easier to do. So that's something to think about. But I actually kind of like the ridges. It gives it a different type look. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now our sides are going to be a little bit different. And I'm just blending those out where that's ran with my water just to give it that look there. Okay, gonna do this side. Now this is going to be different because you just have the one going lengthwise now. You're not having the ones that go up and down on you. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Be careful if an area hasn't dried because you kind of lift the paint up. And then once that starts to dry, what we're also going to do is we're going to come and do the sides, darken them up so that they don't look like they are out of place. If you wanted to even do the back, you can do the back. I'm going to put a hanger on mine so it really shouldn't show. So that's just a personal preference and what you like. Okay, I've got all my edges done. I've got them dry. I kind of rounded the corners a little bit. You can do that if you want. That's totally up to you. But then kind of know how your design is going to set on it and how you want to put it. I have this little part there that we talked about. You could cut that off, but if you want it on the top or the bottom, I think it's going to be more on the top, so I got to know how my pattern is going to fit onto that, and then also the edges, make sure you kind of have that even. So because of this design is so much, we're going to be using it so many times, I'm going to use my spray adhesive all over it. And you want to do a nice even coat. I've already got a little bit on there. Do it on a tray. You might want to do it outside where the air is ventilated, but you don't want that sticky all over everything else. So that's something to think about when you spray that spray adhesive. So I want a little bit of working time here with it. I want to kind of line it up. I want to make sure that all my pieces are where they should be. And I think I am good. So, especially all of these little pieces. We want to make sure that those are nice and tucked down so that we can start our paint process here. I'm going to wipe up that paint because it's all watered down, and I want my paint to start all over again here. We're going to be using stippling brushes, and I use some fabric brushes, but I want to talk to you a little bit about that. A lot of your stipple brushes come and they can be very, very stiff, and they're usually flat on the top, and I actually prefer the rounded kind, and they work really well for me. I picked up a 4-pack at Walmart. These are a little bit more give to them, and I had 4 different sizes. It was right around $4 or $5, so they're very reasonable now, and I like I said, the round kind, not the flat kind, and I can just work with it a little bit better. I also have old fabric brushes that I've used in the past. I like those as well. So just a combination. You can see they look very, very similar, and that is what I use for my brushes. Now for this technique, we want to make sure that our brushes are always dry, and that's something that that we want to do as we're working on. We're going to work from the top of our design down. That seems to work better for me. If you were going to do the corners and stuff, kind of know where they are. If you're going to drill your holes, you may want to drill your holes ahead of time, and that way you can know where you want to put that extra pattern. I'm not going to do that. I like just the way it is. This was a much bigger sign, and I needed more in here, and so I just took some of this and moved it around. So I'm going to start with my leaves. I'm going to set that up there so I can see and refer back to that as well. We'll scare the dog here, see if we can get him running. He's always afraid something's falling in my studio, which it usually is. And I'm going to be using a like a light foliage green for these leaves, but I want to add a lot of color to these leaves. On my other one, I added orange and yellow and a purple. You could add red, brown, whatever you wanted to do, but I'm going to start out with a green first. Now, this is a lighter sign, so we want to use brighter and darker colors. If it was a darker colors, we would want to use lighter paint. This is kind of in the medium between those two, but we'll get it done, but that's okay. We're going to put a lot of other colors on him as well. You could go a little bit darker if you wanted. You could even mix a little bit of color to that if you wanted to, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, when you're doing this, the most important thing, and I try to really stress this, is don't put your paintbrush right in the middle of your paint. Go to your paint, pull it out, and you get that little bit of paint and pounce into it. Now for our more solid parts, we'll be using that and doing that more often, but for our highlighting and shading where we're pouncing, you don't want that much paint, and that is really, really important. If you ever seen a sign where it is bleeding underneath the stencils and it's just a mess, that is why. They're putting it on way too thick, and the application they're putting it on with is something that you really want to think about. So we're starting with that green, and I'm just going to come in here and we're just going to do a nice heavy coat, but again, you're putting it on one layer at a time so that it doesn't get too much for it here. It looks nice and crisp and clean. We did improve on the bridge on our leaves here on the final stencil so that it does look better and cleaner for you. And so we're going to come over to this side. I didn't get enough glue on that bridge of that other one. That also is another reason. So I'm going to jump to my different colors here, and I'm going to use different brushes, but we'll talk a little bit about how to clean a brush in a little bit. And so you could use just one if you wanted to. Another suggestion, and we should go ahead and do this, is do all of your colors at once. So we've got the green down here, and if you need to tape this pumpkin part off so that you don't get your green on it, there is nothing wrong with taping it off. Use painter's tape. I've got some blue running around here somewhere, and you can just tape that right off and do that. Don't feel that that's cheating or wrong or anything like that. Make it easy on you. I don't know who put some of these rules into what we do nowadays, but I don't play by the rules. If I did, I wouldn't be here today. Do what makes it easier for you and do it your way. If it doesn't work, then you know it doesn't work. Those are some of the things that I'd like to pass on to a lot of people, just to know that you can do it your way. Now, if I was going to the darker green, you can simply wipe your brush a couple times, but because we're going to the darker green, we don't have to worry about getting that lighter green all the way out of our brush. So I would do up the sides of this middle bridge, just kind of in the middle, that way it goes on both sides, and down on the bottom of that leaf. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush here, because I need to get in some little tighter areas. And we're going to do the bottom of these stems. And I'm going to do what I think is a leaf right there. And then make that a different color so it kind of stands out. And the bottom of that stem, the leaf. Okay, we are done with that part. So I'm going to do this. We're going to go into purple, and if you want to wash it, purple, I think I could just kind of lightly wipe that and be done with it. But if you want to use the same brush, take it, dry it off as well as you really can after you've rinsed it really, really well and got all the color out. Dry it as much as you can, and then rub it up and down on your skin. Your skin is very, very, very absorbent, and it is one of the fastest ways to dry out a brush. And then it's just like you had it before. So I'm going to put a little bit of purple. You can decide if you want it the same on both of these leaves so they match, or if we want to do something totally different. I think they should kind of be totally different because they're kind of two different leaves, but that's up to you, whatever you feel. I think maybe on this one I might do a little bit of red. I'm going to do maybe the red and the yellow instead of the orange. And it doesn't have to be on the ends of the leaf. It can be anywhere you decide that should be. And again, you could use the brown. You could use whatever you really decide to. So a little bit of orange here. And you can even add the orange to the existing color, and I ended up kind of having them similar anyway. Oh well, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to, while I've got the red out, I'm going to come back in and do our heart in the red, and this is just a bright red, kind of a cardinal, fire, Christmas, any of those, all of the combined. And again, we're loading that the same way. Now because this has more ridges, you want to make sure that you can get down into those ridges if you can. I don't suggest sanding the top of this because it's already smooth, but another thing is you would be taking off the paint layer which also acts as kind of a sealer. So I really think that's the end of my red. So I am going to clean that brush all the way out now. And we're going to start with our acorns and our stems. And for my stem, I think I'm going to go back to that medium brown. And I want a little brush for this. And I gotta remember, I gotta clean this guy's lid out. Arizona, our lids dissolve. I guess because it's so dry. I can literally take a lid and it just disintegrates in my hand. But a little brush to get in all of these individual little tiny. But don't put so much paint that it's spreading out once it hits your stencil. These little veins and these little swirls on these branches. So. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the one on the other side, nice and well, and then we'll be right back. I've got all my little limbs done, and I'm going to go back and finish up this heart. And I'm going to use like a rose color, a medium or light rose color. You could even use a little bit of white with your red if you didn't have that color. But I'm going to really pounce this out, and our highlights are going to be on this side. So I'm going to put this on this side of my little heart. These are the little details that will make your sign stand out and not look just like a store-bought sign with just one color. You can do it with one color. There's nothing wrong with that, but that is totally up to you. It just really adds to that. Okay, now that we've got that little part done, we're going to come in here and we're going to start doing some different colors on our acorns. Our acorn, the nut part, we want a light color, and on the top knot, we want a darker color. And I'm going to do like a mustard color for my nut part, like a raw sienna or a fig skin or something like that, but kind of a yellow brown, a lighter color though. So we're going to load those like we've been doing. And I'm going to do the inside first, then do the top, and that way if a little bit gets over into that, it'll be covered right up with our darker color. Again, you can always tape these off. There's nothing wrong with taping those off. So now that we've got that done, we're going to come in with our darker color, and I'm going to stick with Burnt Umber, because I'm going to use Burnt Umber on my Be Blessed sign. So that is just a personal opinion, and I am going to just go right into that brush because that's a darker color and do that part there. And again, tape it off. You need to tape it. So we want that a nice solid color. Okay. I'm going to give those a minute to dry, and I'm just going to come down and I'm going to start on my Be Blessed sign. Now don't get in a hurry and slop too much paint on it so that the paint gets underneath the stencil, and you can press harder, that's okay. Especially with these ridges, we want to really get down into these ridges really well. And I'm going to go ahead and do the Blessed sign all the way across, and that gives us some time for our stuff on the top to dry, and we'll start from there. We finished our Be Blessed, and I'm going to come back in and work on these acorns a little bit. I'm going to float color on the nut part, and I'm using a little tiny angle, and I'm doing it just the way we did before. You could use a flat, or you could even stipple that with a small brush. I would suggest to tape your paint off. But I dipped that about halfway in. I'm going to blend that out, and I'm just going to go the bottom of the nut part and reload each time you need color. And we're going to get that all shaded up on there. And then we'll come back and we'll highlight the top of our acorn. I'm going to come in with a straw color of yellow now. I'm going to highlight these little acorns now. Just a little bit of paint. Pounce that up and down, get a lot of that off. So I'm going to think about my highlights being on this side. So I'm going to do a little bit, and you can also put a little bit on the nut part, more near the top. And on that part of my acorn. And on this side, because our sun is coming from that direction. Okay, so as you noticed, I had a little bit more paint on that, but I like that the way it is, and so I'm going to leave that and not blend that in at all. So I'm going to come down to the pumpkins, and on my first pumpkin I did them actually in 3 colors, because pumpkins aren't the same color, but the pumpkin and the orange didn't show that much of a difference, so I think I'm going to do the 2 in the back with the terracotta color, which is kind of a browner orange, maybe a little bit of a reddish tint to it. And then the center pumpkin I'm going to do with the orange color from there. So that is what I'm going to be using on my pumpkins. And I'm going to load those the same way again. And I'm not going to worry about tape. Well, you guys, the new designs have the bridge with the pumpkins. So that is nice, and you won't have to worry about that, separating those there. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this pumpkin and this pumpkin, and then I'm just going to come back in and do my middle pumpkin with my orange. I've got my pumpkins all done, and so now I'm going to come in with our straw color, and we're going to highlight these. And if you wanted to put more highlight on the side, you can. I'm going to do on the top part of the pumpkin, and then on the ridge of the pumpkin sticking out, and our outside pumpkin part would also be highlighted. So like on this side here, and then right down that middle. We're not going to put any shading in that middle, so that is if you want to put more yellow into that, you can. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the outside because the sun would kind of be hitting that, but not all the way to the bottom. I'm going to kind of highlight that whole kind of top area. Now, don't think that you're doing it right or wrong if yours doesn't look like mine, if yours is lighter, or if it is darker. Everybody has their own technique or the way they kind of do things. If you paint heavier, you usually paint heavier. If you paint darker, you usually paint darker. So that's a personal thing. Don't change it. Go with it. Learn how to use that to your advantage, and just go with it. That's what makes us all unique, and that's what makes every painter different. So, okay. I'm going to finish up this middle pumpkin here, and then we're going to come in and we're going to add some shadowing to these. For my shading of my pumpkin, I'm going to be using that little brush again, and I'm going to be using a burnt sienna. And I'm going to go from the middle, I'm going to go to the right of that middle part, and then I'll flip it over, and I'm going to do it again because it's always easier for me to do it on that side than the other side. And I like floating the color while I still have the stencil on, because I can just bump up against that line and just go right down it, and that is easy to to do for me. And we'll also come back against the bottom and add some highlights where the pumpkin is sitting. As well, there would be shade down there. And we want to keep this shaded part. It really shows the ridges of the pumpkin this way, but you don't want it so wide that you start to lose your orange. So think about that. You only want about that 1/3 probably at the most across that pumpkin section. And I'm almost done with this last one. And I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to not do the middle, but I'm going to do everything on this side. And I'm going to show you these real quick, and then I'll finish that up. So this middle pumpkin, you guys will have a bridge right here. So we're going to shade on that side of the bridge, because that will be setting that pumpkin behind it down towards the back, and the shadow is on that. We're going to do that on both sides. Okay, I'm going to jump up to a bigger brush, and this is probably a brush I should throw away by now, but I'm going to come across this bottom part, and we're just going to shade that part with our float using the same color. And if you walk that up a little bit on the sides instead of going away straight across, it'll kind of help it be a little bit more round as well. So, okay, now stop, look at it, see if there's anything that you've missed before you take your pattern off. Your pattern usually isn't too hard to line back up, but it's better to do it now. And if you have anything as you're starting to pull it that you see that you may need to fix, then go ahead and fix that. I wish the sign was a little bit bigger so those weren't in the parts there as well. But there is one thing that we're going to do, and if you had a bigger sign, this would even be more so. We're going to set our pumpkins so they're not floating in the air. And I'm going to use the medium brown color in a real wide brush. You could use a smaller one, just move it more. And we'll just put the color on, and we're just going to kind of wisp that back and forth. And that guy doesn't need it because he's already done that, and I'll show you on my other side, so that they look like they're sitting, they're not just floating around. So that little thing there, so that's kind of a good thing to do. And then also on my blessed signs, you can do liner work. I think I'm probably going to leave it on this one. On these, I just added to the right of everything with a highlight color, probably the yellow or the orange on this, but I don't think on this one it needs it. These are the other signs that when it's by itself, I really think it helps it, because we've got so much going on here. I think that that is just fine, just like it is. So I'm going to grab my tray, and we're going to splatter our sign to make it kind of look old and antique-ish and to give it a country feel. And that'll be the last part of our painting. And I'm going to be using burnt umber. You want to use a dark color and quite a bit of paint. We're going to be using our fan brush. And I'm going to wet it. I'm going to knock it off a little bit. We want it wet, but we don't want it so wet that it fans out and makes big spots. The more watered down it is, the bigger your spots get and bleed out. I would rather have it more paint and my spots be smaller. That's also on how much paint is in your brush still, and I always test it. I suggest you doing this outside because these dots can take off on you. And I'm going to get rid of some of these big dots before I go to my piece. I don't mind the big dots, but I like the smaller dots better. And I just set it down there to get rid of some of my paint. And you can see those are smaller dots now. And I kind of go around it, get rid of some of the bigger ones here and there, and then come back as it starts to get finer where I would like that. and just do it that way. And I wouldn't mind it if it was just a tad finer as well. So that's just a personal opinion. That's up to you. I need to get these sides. Okay, finish that up. Let that dry really well. We'll talk about varnishing it. Because we use the lighter materials, you could almost do this as a sign outside instead of hanging it. I went and bought my garden stakes at Walmart, and they come in pretty long sections. I would paint the stick, add a little bit of water to it. We use the medium brown so it matches that, and you could use your wood glue, but I would also put a screw or a nail through it to hold it into place. The other thing we talked about was drilling the holes into it. Do a rope. You could do a heavy-duty rope, or you could do some wire work, and then I would probably tie a raffia bow onto it somewhere, and I think that would make a really cute sign indoors. Now, if you were going to use it indoors, you could spray varnish it with probably at least 3 sprays. I would probably use matte or satin. I don't think I would go with a gloss because we kind of want that country look, but I am going to be using brush on varnish. If you want to put it outside, then I would do at least 5 coats, if not more, on all sides of the sign to really protect it well. You can use a bigger brush because we've got a bigger sign. If it's a soft brush, that's better. If you're starting to see your brush strokes, you don't have enough varnish in your brush, but you don't want it dripping, and you want to stir it. You never shake your varnish to get it prepared to put on to your wood piece, but that and let each layer dry very, very well in between. And I just do it, go do something else, come back, see if it's dry, and just continue it on there. But that is our Be Blessed sign. Well, that kind of gives you some different ideas from signs to recycled materials, and it's just so much fun, and I really love the colors of these, and the different sizes make them unique. So don't forget to get your custom Be Blessed stencil at SpumoniDesigns.com. And if you ever have a question, you can email me at miriamjoy.com. Have a blessed Thanksgiving.